bad boy here has been billed as the most destructive and rapid finfish invasion in the history of the Caribbean, and it's been stated that by the Caribbean Institute and Fisheries Management. This guy is a red lionfish. He belongs to the volitans family, which is a similar family to scorpion fish. They fall into the same genus category if you look them up in the fish books. Obviously, you want to be aware of the bits that can hurt you. That's the most important part of preparing and catching these guys. So to start off with, all these really pretty spines up here on the top that run from the very front all the way back to this little guy, this little stumpy one here, these all contain a neurotoxin inside them that will give you a very nasty sting. There's a couple of spikes in the section there, and that's their pectoral fins, as well as a section down here in their anal fin that also contains a nasty neurotoxin. We first saw these fish on the island in around about 2007. The first recorded sighting of a lionfish was given into the DOE. Since then, what we've seen is a rapid invasion throughout the Caribbean. Initially, they started out at 1995. Hurricane Andrew blew through Florida, Key Largo, that area. And there were 6 breeding female lionfish that were kept in an aquarium in someone's private property. That aquarium was destroyed by the hurricane, and those fish were subsequently released into the Biscayne Bay area from 6 fish. Now, initially we didn't see these guys for the longest time, and it wasn't until around about 2004 that we started seeing them in the Caribbean waters, and they were spotted in the Bahamas and in Bermuda. And at first, the problem kind of got a little bit ignored. We thought, well, Mother Nature will take care of that. Won't be the first invasive species we've seen, so we'll let it be for a little while. Unfortunately, what we didn't realize that the waters here are ideal for these fish. The waters that we have here in the Caribbean is actually better for them than their home, which is very alarming. So what these guys will do is they will take over an entire reef system. These guys can eat up to 80 juvenile fish at a time. They can expand their stomach to 30 times its original size, and they're voracious eaters. What they eat are generally the smaller juvenile fish, as well as the reef cleaners that hang out on the reefs. And that spells double trouble for the reefs in the Caribbean. The first part, the juvenile fish. If you've got no juvenile fish, that means you have no fish growing up to reproduce, so you're starting to lose the stock that you're seeing on the dive sites. The second problem is that they eat all of the reef cleaners, and these are fish that we refer to as bottom feeders, and what they'll do is they'll graze off the algae. So you'll see things like parrotfish and wrasses just grazing in packs. They'll come through, they'll clean a section of algae, and then they'll move on to the next section. With the decimation of those species in the areas that we're seeing these lionfish, it means basically that the reef is being overgrown and choked with algae. So not only are you losing your reef fish, you're also running the risk of irreparable damage on your reef itself. The other problem with these is they have no natural predators, and that's the main cause of alarm here in the Caribbean. There's nothing that will naturally eat these guys.
It will turn itself, or any other predator, it'll turn itself, open up these wings, drop these fins, and now look at the size of that fish. It looks almost as big as a basketball. So that's pretty much why they don't have any predators, because a predator would be coming at it like this, is going to get poked right away.
So, as humans, we're responsible for the introduction of the species into the Caribbean, so we're taking responsibility for trying to control the population by doing culls like we did today. A lot of companies on the island, as well as all of the other countries throughout the Caribbean, will regularly organise tournaments, derbies, culls, whatever it is that we can do. Local divers on the island, local dive shops are getting into it now. A lot of the local restaurants even here in Cayman are starting to serve it. Here at Cobalt Coast, we regularly run specials using the lionfish, especially with these cull and cookouts as well. Michael's Genuine down in Camana Bay are starting to serve it. Even as far down as Tucker down on the East End are also starting to serve lionfish. It's a really tasty alternative to local fish that are endangered. So think your groupers, think your snappers. Not very high on the endangered list here. These guys are not on that list, and they're even tastier, I think, than local grouper. They've got a lovely white, delicate meat. It flakes off when you cook it. It just falls apart. It's beautiful. A lot of people have said it tastes a lot like hog snapper, so that snapper family again. So by eating this, you're saving a grouper, yay, and possibly at the same time helping get rid of the lionfish problem. So they are quite pretty fish, but obviously if we don't do something about it, we are going to end up very similar to sections of the reef in the Bahamas where they weren't as quick to jump on the problem solving. They have whole sections of reef that have nothing left but lionfish. What will happen is once they run out of a native food, so they'll actually create local extinction problems. In a localized area, the local fish will become extinct and all that will be left are the lionfish. When they run out of a native food source, they'll turn to cannibalism. They'll actually eat their own. So there is no way of saying, oh, it's okay, we'll leave them until there's no fish left and then they'll die off. No, they'll just keep reproducing by feeding on themselves, which is again very unusual for a fish species to do that. One thing to note, guys, if you do ever manage to unfortunately get stung by a lionfish, the only first aid is hot water, as hot as you can handle, okay? Now, do not believe if anyone tells you that these fish are neutralized by making them cold. That is not true. The poison is still viable even after they have been frozen, basically. It is heat that breaks down the protein-based poison that they have inside. So you could throw these spines, for instance, in the garbage. A week's time, some poor, thankless garbage man comes along to empty your bin. If they're not properly disposed of, he can actually sting himself as much as 7 days later and still receive a nasty neurotoxin. So we've been working with the DOE quite closely here at Dive Tech, trying to help them and get things moving on, and we've dealt with them and the Marine Conservation Board. A lot of the private sector is behind us. Foster's Food Fair have actually donated $20,000 to, I believe, CITA to be used for the lionfish culls. So what we do, for instance, this Sunday, I think it is, we have a lionfish cull going out. The boat is only $10, so that's all it costs you to go on the trip, and the rest of that money is subsidised by Foster's from that grant that they gave us. We then, when we're finished with that cull, we will de-spine the fish and gut them, and we give them back to Foster's, and Foster's are going to start presenting them in their deli section. I believe it's their deli section or their fresh fish section. So they'll actually be available even if you're not a diver and you still want to try lionfish. You can make your way hopefully down to Foster's very soon and start to be actually buy it from there. As I said, a lot of the restaurants are starting to feature it, and they will buy the fish from the divers at a per pound rate, which is certainly an incentive for us to go out there and cull more of them, especially on things like our days off, and gives us a little bit more of an incentive. To date, however, the government hasn't put a bounty on their heads, but it is something hopefully that's in the pipeline. It's something that's being looked at, worked on. Obviously, there's a ways to go before we get to that stage, but fingers crossed. So what Dora has done here, guys, is she's basically cut just behind the head section. I don't know if you guys can see this, and from there all she's done is literally grabbed the skin between her thumb and her forefinger, and she's just peeled it off. And it is as easy as that. Once you've started it and kind of worked it a little bit, you can pull that skin straight off the top of the fish. And what she's doing here is this bottom section of the fillet has something called pin bones. They're quite small, sturdy bones, and they are in this back section here. They're usually about that big. You really want to get rid of them before you start serving your lionfish. So she's just made sure she's got those pin bones out there. And now she's simply cutting up the fillet that came off quite nicely.